Let me ask you, would you then, by your criteria, is there any military response that Israel can give, first to what Hamas did on October the 7th, the second to what Hezbollah has been doing ever since? Is there any military response Israel can do which, in your eyes, would be justified?
Well, I don't accept the loaded question. You say response. Israel is the aggressor in all of these places. As I say,
they are illegally... the aggressor on October the 7th, was it?
Well, it was actually, because it was occupying Gaza and it was besieging Gaza for 20 years, and even in Israeli general...
You're sounding like you think it was justified what Hamas did.
No.
It's one or the other.
Why? How is it justified?
So it wasn't justified?
Of course not. I've said that many times.
So was Israel not entitled to respond?
No, but I'm questioning you use the word response. Response implies everything starts on October 7th.
No,
I don't accept your timeline.
I've never said that.
Well, you keep saying response.
To that specific terror attack, in a way that if in England somebody suddenly launched an attack on our people and they killed 1,200 and wounded nearly 7,000, I would absolutely expect my government to respond with substantial force. Would you?
Yes, but Britain...
So you would?
Hold on. But is Britain occupying territory in that scenario? Because that's the key point here. It's Shlomo Brom...
It's dangerous wording.
No, it's not dangerous, because I'm
making it sound like... I don't disagree with you.
I'm going to quote... If you let me finish before you keep suggesting I'm supporting October 7th, which I have not.
Sounds like you're justifying it to me.
Well, you're not paying attention.
They're being occupied.
They are occupied, and they're not occupied.
I think they probably are, yeah.
Not probably. The ICJ says they're occupied. Yeah. Shlomo Brom, who's one of the former top Israeli generals, one of their big strategists, said after October the 7th, what did you expect? If you keep people under military occupation,
is that what you think?
They will rise up. Yeah, of course. There's always going to be terrorism.
What do you expect?
Yeah, there's always going to be terrorism and violence as long as you oppress people.
On that scale, you expected that?
No, obviously, I don't expect the details, but do you expect Palestinians to fight back? Of course you do. Everyone who's sane, who looks at this conflict from American presidents downwards, would say the root cause of the violence has to be ending the conflict.
I agree.
So then, talking about tit-for-tat responses
but I also think if you go back
sense.
If you go back to the start in 1948, which I've had many scholars on from both sides of this, probably the most interesting piece I read about this was Jonathan Friedland of The Guardian, who's a Jewish journalist, who concluded, you can construct, if you're reasonably fair-minded about all this, you can construct a solid argument for both sides to feel aggrieved from the very start of this conflict.
Fair enough. And that's a different argument. I'm talking about what you talk about now.
Is, when people say it didn't start October the 7th...
Well, I'm not even going back to 1948. I'm talking about 20 years of Gaza under blockade.
I know.
Yeah, open-air prison camp, to quote David Cameron, that well-known pro-Palestinian lefty.
But also Hamas, in that process since 2005, have clearly run Gaza in a despicable manner.
Agreed.
You wouldn't disagree?
No.
So it's not all Israel's fault, is it?
Well, no, because you're mixing different things up. Is Hamas...
You're always very keen to put it all on Israel.
No, because if we're talking about...
I try and be a little bit more like, hang on. When you commit a terror attack...
you both sides occupation and illegal...
No, I don't.
Yeah, you are. You just said,
I don't.
I try and be fair. You can't be fair to an occupier. By the way, when we talk about Russia and Ukraine, this is what frustrates me. And I know my friend Owen Jones sat here and said the same thing to you. When we talk about Russia, Ukraine, you don't do both sides. You blame Russia as the invader and occupier. You don't do that with Israel. That is the double standard on your part.
No,
I try and be consistent, Piers. I'm morally consistent. I say Russia... Hold on, let me finish the sentence. Russia illegally invaded and occupied Israel and illegally annexed the Crimea. And Israel is doing the same thing in the West Bank, Gaza, the Golan Heights.
As you know, they are completely different.
Yeah, Israel's worse. It's been going on much longer. And people living under much worse conditions. And they've killed more kids.
There is no similarity in these two situations.
Agreed. Israel's is worse.
It's not.
How many kids have been killed in Ukraine versus Gaza?
Well, in 1 year.
Ever.
In 1 year?
Ever. Take whatever point you want. More kids have been killed in Gaza than in Ukraine.
Okay.
Every human rights group agrees with that.
What's happened in Ukraine? We can come to Ukraine. What happened in Ukraine is a Russian dictator invaded illegally.
We agree on Ukraine.
Yeah.
But we don't agree on Israel because you're not consistent.
I think Israel is much more complicated.
That's complicated, as my friend Ta-Nehisi Coates pointed out the other way, is just a good way of avoiding attributing moral responsibility. It's complicated. No, it's not complicated, actually. Israel is the occupier under international law. Israel is the one killing the vast majority of civilians. Right now, it's not a liberal democracy. It's run by neo-fascists right now.
Well, I don't disagree with you. There are some right-wing headbangers on that cabinet. I also think that Netanyahu has to go. I also think the whole of Hamas have to go, right?
Under no scenario is it liberal democracy right now. Palestinians do not have the same rights.
But let me come back to my point about Hezbollah, because that's the most current part of this crisis over there. We'll cover all this. We've got plenty of time. With Hezbollah, my point to you would simply be that if someone does what Hezbollah did on October the 8th, has carried on doing it all year, they have a charter which says they want to eradicate Israel, you have to defend yourself. So the question then becomes, what type of defence or response or reaction or revenge, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to get caught in the semantics of a word. But what kind of thing can Israel do, given that direct threat to them, to their existence? And the same sort of ideology applies in argument to Hamas. But with Hezbollah specifically, this state within a state in Lebanon, which is far better armed, far more powerful, far more resourced.
Far more popular with the people, part of the government. It's much more part of Lebanese society.
And was created by 1,500 members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard.
Supported, not created, but yes.
Well, they trained.
They're also indigenous to Lebanon.
They train.
They're not foreign force.
So my point is, what can Israel do that would actually tick your box of being justified?
My box is a very minimum box. My box is Hippocratic. Do no harm, don't kill civilians. So
you don't respond?
No. You don't respond. This is the same argument with Gaza. You don't respond by killing 40,000 people.
What do you do?
What do you do?
What do you do if you're Israel?
Target Hezbollah people.
How?
I don't know. Jonathan Conricus came on your show last week.
They couldn't have been...
IDF colonel. He said they're not in civilian areas, so we're able to target them. Okay, target them then. If you want to target them under the rules of war, you can target combatants. But Piers, hold on. You just said earlier. Let me finish my point. Then you come back in.
No, Mehdi.
Go on. Then I'm going to finish my point.
You literally just said you can target combatants.
Yes.
But when they did that last week with the walkie-talkies and pages, you said, no, that's a terror attack. It's illegal.
Hold on.
Couldn't there have been a more precise targeting of combatants?
Because they didn't just target combatants, as we've just discussed. B,
very
they did it in civilian areas. And
C,
C, they did it in violation of the amended Protocol 2 of the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, which doesn't allow booby traps.
So there is no...
I already explained the booby traps.
Actually, no, that's not true. It's not true.
Okay.
Booby traps are not allowed if they are genuinely indiscriminate in the way that they potentially...
You don't think going off in a grocery store is indiscriminate?
No, actually, I believe what I've seen...
You gave the British example earlier, Piers. Are you okay with someone blowing you up in Sainsbury's, the guy next to you, blowing you up in the aisle of Sainsbury's?
I believe that what has been reported, right, widely reported, is that 3,000 terrorist militants, Hezbollah members, whatever you want to call them, were very precisely targeted.
Are you saying people
by your criteria?
Did they go off in grocery stores and hospitals?
If it's legal,
Piers, did they go off in grocery stores and hospitals? No, you brought up the UK earlier. We're in London right now. If I go from here to the local Sainsbury's to pick up some chocolate on the way out of the studio, and a terrorist is targeted next to me and they blow it up in Sainsbury's and I lose my eyes, you're saying that's okay?
No, but if you have
Sounds
people...
like you're saying it's okay.
If those people in that grocery store are literally responsible for firing rocket after rocket at
You're okay with them being blown up with me? I'm just collateral damage.
I actually looked at what they did and I thought it was a very precisely targeted...
What about the 500? What about the 500 civilians killed on Monday, which you just don't want to talk about?
No, I'm going to come to that.
You keep saying that. The time's nearly up. 500 people...
The time is not nearly up. Well, we'll be talking for literally 15 minutes. Stop racing the clock down.
I have another show to do, Piers.
Hang on.
500 people died on Monday.
I've come in early for you.
500.
I was looking for a thank you, Piers.
Thank you, Piers. 500 people were killed on Monday. You're not talking about that.
I am going to talk about
it. Sounds like you're justifying that.
I am going to talk about that.
I've not justified October 7th.
First of all, before we get to that, I just want to get inside your head about what you think is legitimate, because you said a very interesting thing. One, what they did was a terror attack, even though they would say they targeted specifically combatants, and that is lawful.
But that's not true, though. We know that's not true.
Well, it is true.
It's not true.
It is true. You can never...
Kids, doctors, nurses...
No, you can never target combatants and not involve civilians ever.
That's funny, because Israel were bragging, well, people on behalf of Israel.
Tell me one war. Didn't they
kill Ismail Haniyeh without collateral damage?
Tell me one.
Hold on, didn't they kill Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran without
Tell me one war where that's happened.
I just told you. You just interrupted me twice. Ismail Haniyeh was killed in Tehran. There was no collateral damage.
But
I don't agree with that killing, but there was no collateral damage.
But to be clear, you think that the targeting of combatants is legitimate?
If you're in a war... Okay. And they are fighting with you, and they are fighters. Yeah, of course it's legitimate.
But you also think that when Israel targeted combatants from Hezbollah last week,
because I don't accept
in a very precise way,
it's
terrorism.
Yeah, I don't.
How can it be both?
Hold on. Leon Panetta says it's terrorism, the former head of the CIA, not just me. Well, you act like it's some crazy extreme view. If the head of the CIA, the former head of the CIA, is saying this is terrorism because it's
I want you to explain what is... So give me an example.
It's literally terror. People in Lebanon don't know what devices to use anymore.
You think killing... Well, Hezbollah don't know what devices to use.
By the way, I'm not playing this game, Piers, because I'm not here to talk about the rules of war. My position is, even if it's legitimate...
You just talked about them.
No, because I'm saying even if it's legitimate, even if I accepted the 3,000 is legitimate, which I don't, I still don't think they should do it.
But you said targeting...
Can I finish a sentence?
You said targeting militants, combatants, is lawful and justified.
Yes, but even then I don't think you should do it.
Okay.
You know what? Can I finish a sentence?
I think there's an inconsistency there.
No, I'm very consistent. I'm saying even if it's legitimate, which in this case is not legitimate, let's say I take the saying it's legitimate, You still shouldn't do it because all it leads to is escalation. I don't want escalation in the Middle East. I don't want a regional war that America dragged into. I'm saying that the way of the gun, the military solution to everything, is a failure, whether you think it's moral or immoral.
How should Israel respond?
I've told you, end the occupation. You don't want to talk about the occupation, Piers. You don't want to talk about the 500 dead. I'm telling you, that's the root cause. Israel wants to do everything except what every smart person is telling them to do. Even members of their own security establishment are telling them to do. End the occupation. And then see what happens.
You say
nobody's waking up in the morning saying we want to kill Israel for no reason.
You say, Mehdi, all roads lead to the occupation.
Yes.
Okay. Israel would say all roads lead to Iran.
Who cares what Israel says? They've lied for the last year. They've lied
Who cares
for
what they
years.
say?
Yeah. Do you care what Russia says?
No.
This is what I'm saying. You're inconsistent. The
Israel's
occupier and
Israel's
the
a liberal
invader
democracy.
doesn't. I don't care.
It's not a barbaric.
So if you're a liberal
dictatorship.
democracy, first of all, they're not a liberal democracy, and second of all,
Well, they are.
No, they're not. They're an ethnocracy. But even if they were a liberal democracy, you don't get to invade other people's land. That's not an excuse. Piers, you sound like you're justifying an illegal military occupation here.
No, I'm not.
You just did. You said they're a liberal democracy. Sounds like you're justifying occupation.
You're extrapolating two things together. Why?
I said it's an occupation. You said, but they're a liberal democracy. Sounds like a justification.
I'm just coming back to one thing because I'm curious what you think Israel could do that would pass your test.
Probably not much. I'm as close
Nothing.
I'm as close to a pacifist as you can get. I think you only use
Pacifism
force
is not
to defend yourself.
Everyone else to attack you and to rape and murder and pillage you, to fire rockets all year.
Who's raping and
You don't
murdering?
think that's what Hamas did in October?
I thought we were talking about Hezbollah. You're jumping around.
I'm talking about both.
You were talking about Hezbollah a moment ago.
It's the same. To me, it's the same.
But that's the problem. To you, it's the same. Everything's very simplistic.
Let me explain why.
Is not simplistic.
Let me explain why. You have two.
Lebanon is way more complicated.
To me, you have two groups of terrorists funded by Iran. They both are wedded to the existential removal and disintegration of all things Israel, and they're prepared to use a lot of violence to achieve that.
But not as much violence as Israel has used to occupy their land for 50 years in the case of Gaza and the West Bank.
So your argument is whatever Hamas has done and whatever Hezbollah does is justified.
No. The only person justifying violence here is you, Piers, not me. So I've not justified any violence today. You've justified terrorist attacks via pages. You seem to have justified the occupation. You won't even say occupation.
I do think the specific targeting of Hezbollah in the way that they did it...
Do you think it makes Israel safer?
That's a different question.
Well, that's the question that matters to me.
I think Israel
if
feels...
There's no point doing all this, and at the end of the day, the war continues. I want to end the conflict, Piers.
So, of course, maybe this is...
Well, then escalations don't help. Israel is briefing the press, Piers.
Just saying, I want peace and joy. You sound like Kamala Harris.
No, actually, Kamala Harris is funding Israel. She supports you, so that's the problem.
She doesn't support me.
She supports your position that Israel has a right to do this stuff. It doesn't have a right to do this stuff.
They have a right to do all of it. I've never said that.
Oh, you pick and choose which bits?
Yeah.
What do you think they have a right to do?
I think that they have been disproportionate in their response to Gaza.
That's very vague. What do you think they're allowed to do in Gaza? You made me very specific. What do you think they should specifically do in Gaza?
I think in Gaza that they were the victims on October the 7th.
You've already said that.
I know.
What should they do in Gaza?
So I think they are perfectly entitled to go after Hamas. What they're not entitled to do, in my estimation, is to level the whole of Gaza to the ground in the way they've been doing. Nor can they move vast numbers of Palestinian civilians to specific areas.
Those are war crimes.
And then bomb those areas as well.
And those are war crimes,
So on those things,
those are war crimes, yes?
Probably, yeah.
And what about in Lebanon?
In Lebanon...
They just killed 500 people.
There is, to me, a big difference.
50 children.
I'm about to answer you. I think there is a big difference between what they did in the targeting of the pages and what they did with the airstrikes, which were far more indiscriminate and killed far more civilians.
I mean,
and my question for Netanyahu, if he would dare to do an interview with me, which he now won't, but if he did, I would say, what are you trying to achieve here? Because it seems to me you're just levelling Gaza, killing tens of thousands of people in the process.
Trying to stay in office.
You're never going to finish off Hamas completely. You're certainly not doing anything but, in my view, fueling their ideology. And you have no plan for what happens in Gaza afterwards.
Agreed.
And you have a bunch of right-wing nut jobs in your
finally
cabinet who actually do speak in quite a genocidal way. All of that I agree
They
with.
are about Lebanon too, by the way. You know that, right? They're speaking about Lebanon in a genocidal way too.
I think there are people there who just want total war with everything to do with Palestinians.
But don't you think someone like you with your huge platform should be calling that out consistently?
I do, but I also
think...
No,
you just gave me a whole thing. Iran backs Hamas, Hezbollah, terrorism. That just sounds like an Israeli narrative.
You take one side completely.
Just like you do in Ukraine.
No, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm consistent. I take the side of the Ukrainian people under occupation and the Palestinian people under occupation. I'm consistent.
No, you're not. They're totally different situations.
You have to say that because you're not consistent.
And you have to say what you say.
No, but I literally described it. 2 people's under foreign occupation, 2 people's having their hospitals bombed, 2 people's having their kids killed, 2 people facing governments that say genocidal stuff. Yeah, I'm consistent.
One is a democracy and an ally of the
Says
West,
you.
and one is
Oh,
not.
ally of the West. What little slip in there? What's that got to do with anything? So allies of the West get to be genocidal.
No.
Why did you say ally of the West? Why is that relevant?
I don't believe what they're doing in
So if
Gaza.
Russia was an ally of the West, they could
hang
kill
on.
people in Ukraine?
I don't believe what
Wow.
they're doing in Gaza is genocide. You do, I don't.
Well,
genocide is the complete
Put genocide to one side.
destruction of
Whether we
people.
agree or not on genocide, and it is genocidal.
It's not
You just
genocide.
said they're your ally of the West. Why is that relevant?
I think it's important that you support.
So if
your
you're an
allies.
ally of the West, you get to kill kids.
No, you get support.
Why is it relevant?
You support.
You're making my point for me, Piers.
support-
I'm consistent.
you support
I don't
your-
care whether you're an
No,
ally
Mehdi,
of the West
Mehdi.
or an enemy of the West.
Fine.
I care about what you do.
Yes.
And Russia and Israel both committing
Yes.
war crimes,
Yes.
both saying genocidal
Yes,
stuff.
but Mehdi, here's my point. You are so blindly anti-Israel that you frame everything.
I could say the same thing to you about Russia.
I'm very blindly against Russia.
Okay,
yes.
then so again, so you're
Are you
inconsistent. I'm exactly. I'm consistent. I'm blindly anti-occupying Russia that occupies Ukraine, and I'm blindly anti an Israel that occupies Gaza. By the way, another area I'm consistent is I do think both wars need to come to an end, and they're going to come to an end through some sort of negotiation. I don't believe in prolonged conflict. I don't know. I'm not a negotiator.
What's
I
the
don't
negotiation in
I don't
Ukraine?
believe there's a military solution to either conflict.
Give me the solution.
I don't have one. Do you have a military solution? I don't think there is one.
We can't possibly give Putin what he's taken.
No, I agree.
So how do you do it?
I don't know, but I don't think the military continuing helps. I mean, how do you win militarily? I don't know how that
Would
works.
you have said
either.
that in World War II
What do you mean?
when the Nazis were trying to take over the world?
No, there was a plausible plan to win, wasn't there, when the US came in?
Just to fight them.
And there were no nuclear weapons back then, Piers, as you know.
Okay, but you just think Putin would ever use them?
Do you not think he would?
No. Why would he?